Our scripture this morning, our second one, is John 1, verses 43 through 51. And you've probably already figured out the gist of the sermon today, huh? Probably a little bit. The next day, Jesus wanted to go to Galilee, and he found Philip. He said to him, "Follow me." Philip was in Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and the prophets, Jesus, Joseph's son from Nazareth." Nathanael responded, "Can anything from Nazareth be good?" And Philip said, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, and he said to him, "Here is a genuine Israelite in whom there is no dissent." Nathanael asked him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered, "Before Philip called you, I saw you under the fig tree." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are God's son. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under a fig tree? You will see greater things than these. I assure you that you will see heaven open and God's angels going up and down on earth on the human one." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. These stories are a few years apart from each other. One of them's the Old Testament and one's the New Testament, but still it's the same thing, the same message. Being called by God, being made sure that God would call somebody. Now, as a person of God, what is the worst thing that God could ask you to do? Something out of your comfort zone. Think about what that thing is for you. Now, I have a warning for you. Don't ever say, "God, I will never do whatever that thing is." Don't do it. Because God called me to be a pastor when I was 18, and I couldn't do it because I was a female and I was Baptist, and I told him no. And then when I got older and I got divorced, I said, "Well, I can't do it because I'm still sort of Baptist and I'm divorced, so I really can't do it now." And then I told God, "Well, you know what? I know you're still calling me, but people in mental health really, really need me because I am really, really good. So this is what would please you, that I work in mental health and I'll do a really good job and I'll minister to people there. So God, this is really what you want me to do, right?" No. I have tried to tell God that I'm not good enough to do this, and he knows that. I have tried to tell God I want my Aaron to walk with me like Moses did when Moses said, "Well, who's going to talk for me?" And he sent Aaron. I don't have one of those. He just sends me. And I tried to tell God I'm not prepared for this. I don't do this. I don't like to be in front of people. And God said, "It's okay. I got it handled." We're talking about my mom's 90th birthday party, and we're getting ready for that. And my mother loves to be the center of attention. There will be a tiara. There will be birthday cake. There will be a big chair for her to sit and be the center of attention. For me, I like to be in the wall, I'll do the stuff, but I don't want people to see me. But when God calls us to do something, he equips us to be able to do it. It doesn't make us happy sometimes, but he equips us to do it. And when God calls us, we need to respond. One day when I was working in mental health, I was on my way to work, and it took me about 30 minutes to drive. And on the way, God said, "You need to stop at the bank and pick up $20 for so-and-so." I'm like, "Well, God, no. One, just no. And two, I'm not really particularly fond of that person." And God says, "Well, you're going to stop and pick up $20 for her." And I'm like, "Why?" "Because I said so." I don't know about this. So I finally argued with God for a while and went by the bank because it was right on the way and picked up the $20, and I walked in and I'm like, "Now what do I do with it? And do I just take it to her and say, 'Here's your $20? I don't even know why I picked up $20. It's like, "No, put it in an envelope and put her name on it." So I did, and I took it to the front and I handed it to the lady up front, and I said, when she comes in, would you hand this to her? She says, why? I said, I don't know. She said, okay. So it's about 20 minutes later, one of my coworkers came back, and she said, did you hear about so-and-so? I said, no. And she said, her brother had an accident last night. They're not expecting him to live, and she's having to go out of town, and they're trying to take up money to help her go. I didn't know that, but I listened. I was ill and frustrated, but I listened. Sometimes it's important for us to listen to God, even when God asks us to do something for them people that we're not particularly fond of, because it does make a difference. God guides us. He leads us in all that we do. I had told you guys I spent several years working at Gaston Memorial as a chaplain. And the other day, this girl friended me, and she was a friend of somebody else that I was a friend with, and so I accepted the friend invitation on Facebook and didn't think anything about it. Well, Saturday morning, I get a message from her, and she says, did you work as a chaplain at Gaston Memorial Hospital? And I think, well, do I want to say yes or do I want to say no? And I finally said yes. And she said, you were there when my dad passed. And I remembered the last name, but I couldn't piece things together. And I was trying, and she said it was 2011. Well, y'all, I can't remember yesterday half the time. So I'm having a hard time figuring, 2011, and there's been hundreds of people that I've been blessed to be with during that time. And so I can't pull this one person out, but I remember the name. And she said, my mom was so devastated that the only thing that she could think of was she wanted my dad's wedding band. She wanted to be able to have my dad's wedding band. She said, and we couldn't get it off, and I had just had my baby. She was a little less than a year old. She said, and my mom's standing there trying to get the wedding band off, and I said, Mom, it's okay, I'll get it. And she starts working with it. She said, but you said, I'll help you. And she said, you stepped in, and you helped us get his wedding band off. She said, that meant more to me that somebody would take time because that's what we needed at the time. For me, at that time, it was just the right thing to do. God leads us, and He calls us to do, sometimes it's things that are so simple. But when we listen to His voice and we follow what He says, it has impact on people's lives. It has an impact that somebody from 2011 is trying to find me in 2017, 2018 to say thank you for taking time. What a blessing. As a pastor, sometimes you wonder, does what I do make any difference? And I know sometimes as church members, we do the same thing. Does it matter if I'm at church? Does it matter if I come? Does it matter if I work? Does it matter if I go to Phoenix and help those folks out? Does it matter if I bring the underwear or if I bring a cake or if I do something? Does it matter if we do backpacks for kids? Yes, it does. Does it matter if people remember our names? No, it doesn't. What matters is the fact that God has been blessed through something that we've done. One of the ladies at Kramer the other day brought a cake, and she just stopped by the store and picked up a cake, and she was laughing. She said, did they like that home-baked cake that I brought? And we were laughing because it was, Donna, you probably, the chocolate one with the white, oh yeah. Everybody remembers that cake. And they had a fit over it. And she said, it's $7.99 at wherever she got it from. She said, I'll bring one next time because they had a fit over it. Somebody thought about them. Somebody remembered them. Somebody cared enough about them to do something for them. It's not that much that we do. I think a lot of times, and probably Gary and Kathy will agree with this, we get more fun and have a better time when we're getting stuff together because we laugh and we cut up and we carry on. And then we go over and we get to meet these wonderful people. And for me, it's more of a blessing for me than I think it is for them. What a gift it is for us to be called to be able to serve somebody, to be able to give to them, to be able to reach out to them, to be able to be part of their lives. And while you're there, sometimes you hear part of their stories. One guy came up to me and he said, I'm going to do better in my life. He said, I'm a veteran and right now I just don't have a place to live. He said, but one day things are going to get better. I had another young lady that came up to me and talked to me. And it gives us an opportunity to listen to their personal stories. It gives us an opportunity to be part of their lives and to give them a kindness. God may not call you into that. I had a parishioner one time, and he was part of the prison ministry. And he tried for years and years and years and years and years to get me to be called into the prison ministry. And I told him, God still has not called me. This is not something that I can do. But I can do this. This is where I'm comfortable. This is where God calls me. We're not all called to do the same thing. But we are all called. Every one of us in here are called by Christ to do something. Whether it's to tell Eli about his family, or whether it's to believe in Jesus Christ and go out and share the good news. Can you imagine when the people of Jericho, the Israelites were told, I want you guys to march around Jericho 7 times. And it's going to fall when we make noise. Sure it is, right? Or what about Noah? We live now on the little river. And I understand that at some point in time there's going to be a little flood on that little river. Lee and I have not started building an ark yet. And we live near water. Can you imagine Noah? You live in the middle of the desert. But Noah, this is what I want you to do. I want you to build this monstrous boat. And I want you to collect all these critters to put in it. Not only do I want you to get the boat, but I want you to have the critters. Really, God? And Noah says, okay. I trust you enough, God. What about Mary? Mary, I know you're not married yet, but you're going to get pregnant. Is that cool? And Mary says, okay. I'm your servant. I'll do what you want. And then here's Joseph, and God sends this angel to him and says, oh, by the way, you're married, or you're engaged to get married. That's really good. By the way, your wife's pregnant, and it's all good, okay? So you just go handle that because it's going to be okay. You know, sometimes we think about the people in the Bible and think, you know, God called them because they were better than me. I can't be as good as them. Well, how many of us can reach the standard of a prostitute? I can even make it to that one. What about Rahab? You remember Rahab in the Old Testament? She hid the spies so that the spies could find out what they needed to find out so that the Israelites could be victorious. She listened to God. And she was not a woman that people would have been talking about in a good way, would they? We all have something that we can give to God. We all are called of God. And sometimes we have to just be quiet and listen. How many of us got emails messages this week? Facebook messages. I know Larry got a Facebook message because Lee sent it to him. We have discovered Doffers, if y'all have not. And they have black bean paste is what Lee calls it. And she's in love with black bean paste and sour cream. So, yeah, it sounds horrible and it doesn't look too pretty, but it is good. But we have all of these devices, don't we? We have phones. We can't get away from them. 30 years ago, when we needed to use the phone, what did we do? We wrote a letter. Or sometimes we'd use the payphone. And I'm about to date myself, and I'm sorry. But I can remember dating guys, and before I went out, my mom would give me a dime to keep in my shoe in case I needed to call home and get a ride home. And there was a couple of times I used that dime because he was just being a jerk. But now, the kids don't even have to have a dime in their shoe. They just have their phone and they call and say, I'm coming home. Because most of them have got a car. We have so many ways to communicate, but we can't be quiet and just let God speak to us. How can we tell God, "Here I am, Lord," if we can't hear the message that He's given us? We have to listen and we have to hear. I always laughed at my son. I said he got the same disease his dad had when he was younger, before Aaron was born, because he could never hear anything anyway. It was always selective hearing. And Aaron got that after he got older. And I know none of the men here have that, right? Huh? I think it's a thing of you acquire that when you get married. And there's something about getting married and selective hearing, but just as soon as you get married, you get that disease where you can't hear anymore. I don't know. I think there needs to be a study on that to see where that correlates, but we hadn't gotten that far yet. But when you start asking God to speak to you and you start actually listening to Him, you have to get to a point where you ask Him to open your eyes and your ears and your heart. And I will tell you, do not ask Him to open those things if you don't want to see what's around you, or if you don't want your heart impacted. What is our commitment to the Lord? What are we planning to give Him? What are we willing to give Him? Are we willing to give Him ourselves? Sometimes when we hear Him call, we'll go say, "Well, Mary Helen, what is it you want?" Mary Helen will say, "I don't want you." And then we hear another voice and we'll say, "Well, Pauline, what do you want?" She says, "I didn't call you." Are we willing to listen to that voice and accept that it's God's voice? And not only that, when we hear that voice, are we willing to say, "Here I am, and whatever you want me to do, I'm willing to do." If you want me to move, if you want me to speak, if you want me to preach, if you want me to do a funeral, whatever you want me to do, God, I'll do. Are we willing to give to God what God is willing to give to us? Are we willing to be as devoted to Him as He is to us? Take some time this week to be still and be quiet and listen to the voice of God, but not only listen, dedicate yourself to what He calls you to do. Amen.